our favorite tradition is Los Tres Reyes Magos.
Mm-hmm.
And basically I believe it's the day after Christmas, we have presents. It's like an extra Christmas. And we have this king cake, which is not Mardi Gras, but it's kind of like somewhat the same kind of concept, except for there's babies inside the cake, and we all cut the cake. And whoever gets the baby has to buy the cake the next year, and it just keeps like everybody coming back. So it's like a great reunion.
Hey, I'm Valentina. I'm a freshman going into secondary education, and my favorite tradition will be making tamales.
Hi, I'm Katie. I'm a sophomore psychology major, and my favorite American tradition is Mardi Gras because I really love the big floats and the parades.
I'm Haley Wiggins. I'm a junior communication major, and my favorite tradition is Thanksgiving because I love spending time with family, and every year we go to Arkansas and spend a week there for Thanksgiving.
Hello guys, my name is Juliana Nobles, and my favorite tradition from my country is Dia de las Velitas, is like Candles Day. And I like it because that day we light the candles and we wake up really early, like all the kids in the street, they wake up early. And I don't know, it's just so fun to spend time with your friends in the same like neighborhood and with your family and making wishes, which is also what we do with the candles. And yeah, it's really fun.
3, 2, 1.
You're listening to Latino Living,
Is it recording right?
a podcast about the life of Latinos in Natchitoches, Louisiana. Este podcast es parte de HSJA and NSU. During each episode, we will share with you una historia about Hispanic living in this corner of Louisiana.
I am Alison Flores, your editor.
I am Isabel Juarez, your assistant producer.
I am Naydu Daza, your host.
I'm Nia Portillo, your producer.
And this is Latino Living,
Un podcast para todos.
Hola a todos, estamos de vuelta en Latino Living. On today's episode, we're going to talk about traditions.
When we think of traditions, we think of the things that we grew up doing as a family, or things that are important to us as a culture or as a country. As someone who's from Honduras, I partake in a lot of traditions that are Honduran related.
So Leah, yes, earlier we were talking about traditions, and I was specifically talking about my favorite traditions and how mine were kind of like important in the coast, like in the coast part of Colombia, and that's where I'm from. So since I'm from Cartagena, we usually focus on those kind of traditions like Fiesta de la Independencia or Festival del Dulce. So we were, just touching on each of us like special moments that usually are rooted from our families, friends, and all of those times and all these memories that we built throughout all of our life.
I think it's really important to talk about traditions, at this time of the year, because it's something that is so special, and it makes so many like core memories in our childhoods and in our lives that develop us. And also whenever we move, like me and you have moved to the United States, those traditions have and may look a little different. But before we move on and get into more detail about our traditions and how traditions impact us, we need to talk about what a tradition is, who is composing of this group that are making traditions happening, and is it just a conventional culture, country traditions that we think of when we think of traditions?
And that's why today, Leah, we brought our expert, Dr. Shin Rasmussen, to know what traditions are.
So a tradition is something that is continued over time by a group of people, often called a folk group. And this folk group can be as small as 2 people. For example, if a couple, for every Tuesday night, they have a card game that they play, and they have foods they bring every single time, and it just wouldn't be right without those pickle chips there. Or it can be as large as a nation. For example, there are traditions that involve all of us on the 4th of July that we all know, Typically, though, a tradition is something that is in a bit of a small group, maybe the size of a church congregation, or it could be a family or something, or a student population. But it can also be pretty big and spread out.
Entonces, when we think about traditions, we don't only have to focus on cultural traditions or ethnic traditions or what country. We can think about, like Dr. Shin mentioned, whenever you are a fanatic of football people also have traditions that they follow whenever the football season starts rolling around, or basketball. It's all about this type of subcultures and what cultures is, not just ethnically or by race, but also by the things that we like and the things that we share in common. So traditions can really shape what a person does and how a person feels. And I think that whenever you move to a different country or you move from one tradition to another, there's a bit of culture shock there.
I mean, I lived in Japan for 4 years. And, at first you're just loving it. You're thinking everything is so cool, And I'm not, I don't want to use the word like exotic, but then again, every culture is going to be exotic to someone that is very far removed from that. I'm sure the Japanese people, and I know this because I've talked to many of them, they experience a wee bit of exoticism when they come to the U.S. because things are very different. So, and it's fun and colorful in that way because all you're seeing are wow, everything's so different. But at the same time, then you hit the cultural shock where you go, wow, is everyone around here crazy? And just the little things like driving on the other side of the road as they do in Japan. This is what you're gonna, for a while, you're thinking you're gonna die. And or the way that in some places in Asia, traffic is more fluid, you might say. And then you get used to it and you realize that serves its own purpose. And suddenly it starts to make sense.
So, Leah, you remember whenever you first got to the U.S., did you had any culture shocks?
So my first culture shock was pancakes. My stepmom was trying to be really nice and try to adjust me and my brother as we, are moving from our home to this new house. So she made pancakes for us, and immediately I walked into the kitchen. There's big, thick, fluffy pancakes, and there's this weird thing that is like syrup, but I had no idea what that was. And I'm like, where's the honey? Why are these pancakes so fat and big? And yeah, that was my culture shock.
So we're talking about breakfast. I think my culture shock, like the biggest one I had when it comes to like food, it was that whenever I got here, in my country, my mom's breakfast will always be plantains, potatoes, like boiled plantains, boiled potato, maybe fried, maybe some fries, like at home fries. Also, let's see what else she would cook. Oh, she would always make us like her sandwich, but she would put lettuce on them and stuff like that for breakfast. And of course, eggs, cheese, like queso as we call it there. And then when I got here, well, the breakfast were pancakes and waffles and these things called sausage that they just look like a burger meat. So that was like a big thing for me. I was like, this is not a breakfast. And then also the portions. Portions were big. Like Colombian food, in my case, at least in my family, it wasn't a lot of food. It was, it was enough to make you full. It was good. Rice was on every single lunch. And here, suddenly, you don't eat rice. It's like, why? So that was my biggest culture shock, I guess, on the food side, because food is something that I really love to try. I really love to try different things. But on that case, it was hard. I was like, I'm just gonna eat rice and chicken every single day because I don't know what else, And then, of course, you're used to your mom's cook. You're used to your parents doing different stuff every single day. And then you're first moving here, and it was hard. The food was hard, the food part. Thankfully, now I'm used to it, and I've discovered what I like, but back then, no.
Yeah, and I think that just culture shock in general can look differently. I feel like we related a lot to food, but there's other things that culture shock kind of does. But once you're out of it, and once you try to be more open about this new traditions, new customs, new everything, then you can really jump into this area of kind of appreciating what's new and transforming it. And that's how traditions evolve.
And this is why, Leah, we brought here today Kevin Juarez. He's an international student coming from Honduras who is pursuing a music degree.
O sea, creo que esas tradiciones que tenemos en Honduras, cada país tiene sus tradiciones. Entonces creo que de ahí se viene formando uno de esas tradiciones y obviamente cuando uno va a otros países y así está expuesto a otras cosas, pues uno también, o sea, creo que se añaden a la personalidad de uno. Entonces, sí, en mi caso, o sea, yo amo mis tradiciones y todo, y también me gustan así otras tradiciones que me gustaría así como celebrar o así a veces me gusta celebrar. Entonces creo que viene siendo algo así lindo, así como experimentar y así tener todas esas tradiciones. Creo que uno tiene que ser abierto y eh, no tiene que cerrarse solo a una tradición porque hay muchas cosas así que uno puede celebrar y pues son muy bonitas y muy diferentes y también agradables.
Definitely, it is very important to get out of your comfort zone and try new things whenever you move to a whole different country, a different setup. And this is something that we all, every single day, we try to implement and get better at. But what are some of those traditions that we really like here, that we have learned to love throughout the time, throughout the years, that we would like to introduce in our own cultures?
Kevin was mentioning how one of the traditions, American traditions, because in Honduras and in Colombia, I'm sure, we all know about Thanksgiving, El Día de Acción de Gracias. Pero we're not like American people who's celebrating, who televise that first cut into the turkey. We just sort of like know that it exists, but we've never done what American people do, which is gather as a family and be thankful for those things. And that is what Kevin loves the most and plans to incorporate into his country.
Yeah, I think Thanksgiving is one of those celebrations that well, at the beginning when I first heard of it, I was like, okay, this is cool, you know, but I didn't really understand the meaning behind it. And throughout the years that I have got to gather with families and friends, and, you know, we have slowly start to celebrate Thanksgiving, I understood the meaning behind it and why it is so important for the American culture. And I understand why Kevin would love to incorporate that on his family or on his country, because that is something that I think I would like to do too in the future.
Just the meaning of the Thanksgiving, that's like really nice, and maybe that's not a thing that we do in Honduras, so that's maybe another one, like the Thanksgiving celebration.
But all of this episode just to say that traditions are important. We should be open to the way that traditions can evolve us, they can develop us, and that we can be better persons and better humans. Just adapting and evolving is something that we should always aim to do. Tradiciones are those things that keep us together and keep us connected to who we are and, you know, to the people that we love and the people around us. So that's why we chose this episode.
Yeah, I think this episode was really close to our heart, just like the other ones that we have made. But this one, it is important so we can all know a little bit more about each other, a little bit more of our cultures, because we are Hispanics, but I don't know about her traditions and she didn't know about mine. So those are those little things that even though traditions can change throughout cultures, countries, and, you know, everywhere, they all have the same meaning, and it's to keep people together, to keep you celebrating something, to keep you being grateful for something. And I think this is why traditions are very important, not just for us, but for everybody else. And I'm sure that we have just mentioned a few, like a little amount of traditions that we celebrate, and there are countless of traditions going out through every single country, every single culture, and throughout the world. And this is why we should keep highlighting those traditions to, you know, understand that even though we're different, we all want to celebrate with our loved ones and the things that we love the most.
Don't forget to check us out on Instagram, hsj.nsula, and of course, on YouTube and Spotify for Latino Living, hsj.nsula, and then look on the podcast section for Latino Living episodes, and hsj.nsula, Spotify, Latino Living.
And remember, one more time, this is Latino Living, un podcast para todos.
Ciao!